Gamma Quadrant is a supplement for Star Trek Adventures published by Modiphius in 2020. It runs 128 pages and is squarely based on wartime events from the show Deep Space Nine. The authors provide ample details about the political, social, and technological context of the war, so you don't have to go back and watch the show, but I do have to talk about this show for a minute before getting into the book. Star Trek Deep Space Nine ran from 1993 to 1999. It went for 7 seasons, totaling 176 episodes, all of which centered around a Federation starbase in the Alpha Quadrant that sat next to a wormhole that led to the Gamma Quadrant. I watched the show when it originally aired, and then again about 10 years later. Unlike most recent Star Trek shows that place quality over quantity in terms of the number of episodes per season, this was an old school network show. The reason I mention this is because if you pick up this book, Star Trek Adventures Gamma Quadrant, you might be tempted to rewatch DS9 to get a better feel for what this book is all about, which is the war with the Dominion. But be warned, it's 132 hours of programming, not all of it good. I don't love or hate DS9, it's a mixed bag, with the occasional amazing moment. But the good news is that you don't really need to watch the show to get into this book. And actually, if you've never really watched the show and you read this book cover to cover, you'd probably come away thinking it was one of the most brilliantly realized space opera backdrops ever conceived. The reason being is that it's actually the product of dozens of writers over years of production who created a ton of great ideas that honestly didn't always get translated well to the television screen. The book provides a few things. 1, a good breakdown of the Dominion itself, one with more backstory and details of its inner workings than the show itself. 2, notable planets and societies in the Gamma Quadrant that have either joined or opposed the Dominion. Unfortunately, if you want to see what a lot of these alien species look like, you'll need to watch the show or search online. 3, a breakdown of the war from beginning to end, again with more detail than the show. 4, 12 new playable species, all of which are associated with the Dominion, which of course creates a little hiccup if you plan on running a Starfleet campaign, but it's not a deal breaker. 5, 14 new starships, 6 Dominion, 6 Federation, and a couple of mutants. Again, unfortunately, you're not going to get illustrations for a lot of these ships in the book. 6, a handful of plot hooks along with 13 NPCs. And 7, a section on how to craft a Dominion war adventure. I'm just going to touch on the sections that I thought were the most intriguing. The section on the Dominion itself, both its rise to power and how it kept its power, is really striking to me. It portrays what is essentially a fascist theocracy that is spreading across a quarter of the galaxy and threatens to swallow another quarter of it, our Alpha Quadrant, through that wormhole where Deep Space Nine is located. The authors explain in detail how the changelings, the masterminds and founders of the Dominion, have genetically engineered a highly intelligent servant race called the Vorta to handle all of the administrative work, as well as a warrior race called the Jem'Hadar, who can naturally cloak themselves and are addicted to a drug that keeps them in line. Both of these sub-races are cloned in vats and can mature in just a few days. But it gets more interesting. Not only do the changelings never meet face to face with the species who they conquer, neither do the Vorta. The Vorta, in turn, co-opt or manipulate subject races to make first contact with new races and manage all interactions from the shadows. When it comes to the member species, they run the gamut from fully cooperative to being on the edge of expulsion. But one thing is clear about the changelings. They hold all solid species as lesser life forms and ultimately want to eradicate them. Their tactics are utterly ruthless, and they exploit entire planets in every possible way. In other words, they are a worthy enemy to rally against in a war setting. The only reason I can imagine to include such species as the Dosi or the Sona is to check off a box for the benefit of the Star Trek Adventures product line itself. Most of the new species in the book only appeared in one episode or another of the show, and therefore don't really have the sort of developed cultural backstory that would make playing one interesting. Nor do most of the new species really fit in as Starfleet material since they are from Dominion-controlled planets. That being said, the authors included changelings as a playable race, and from a role-playing game perspective, especially one set during a pitched war against changelings, that is very interesting. It would seem to a player that playing a powerful shapeshifter would unlock a lot of doors, but the GM has many tools to suppress a changeling PC. the xenophobia from other races, technology to detect them, and the character's own innate desire to return to the so-called Great Link, the collective mind where all changelings live as one big ocean of liquid flesh. So here are some pros and cons that I have for this book, starting with the cons. Filler blocks. It looks like the random LCARS filler is here to stay. After reviewing the Star Trek Adventures core book and one of the mission compendiums, I was hoping to see less generic graphical filler, but it's alive and well in the Gamma Quadrant. These blocks of graphics don't pertain to the material that they're placed next to, which is a huge missed opportunity. Ship presentation. Just like in the core rulebook, the ships are presented unbroken across multiple pages instead of having one ship per page or one ship for every 2 pages. The broken up layout makes it hard to use the information. No episode citation. Most of the book recites the events and backstory of the war with the Dominion and recaps entire episodes of Deep Space Nine, but never mentions the name of the episode. So if you wanted to relive a specific little story arc, you'd have to do some digging to find the specific episode that the authors summarize as canonical fact. As for what I love about this book, the Dominion is bad. I remember from the show that the Dominion were definitely the bad guys, but this book really drives that point home. The casual genocide, the devious genetic manipulation and engineering, the smug superiority and duplicity of the changelings. All of it makes for a really sort of classic sci-fi villain species. Recap of the war. Reading the detailed explanation of each of the factions and major battles of the war is like re-experiencing the best segment of the Deep Space Nine series, which is of course the war. And war as a playground. This book definitely limits you to a specific period on the Star Trek timeline, the early 2370s to be exact, but this environment gives the GM fertile grounds for a rich story at the table. As the book puts it, the Dominion War offers a massive amount of possibilities for players to get involved, both long-term veterans from previous campaigns and raw recruits. Honestly, I don't get to play these games as much as I'd like, but I do make the time to read them through. And since I happen to be a Trek fan who has been on the DS9 roller coaster a couple times, this to me was a really fun read and recap of one of the darkest chapters in Starfleet history. As always, thanks for watching. This is Dave signing off. See ya.